Hello, and welcome to Conversations from the Alcove. This is a conversation series on theater, art, playwriting, and the world, not necessarily in that order. And my name is Caridad Svich, and I'm the artistic director of the Alcove, which is the new play development program at the Lucille Lortel Theater in New York City. I'm going to start with a brief audio description and then introduce our guest for today. So I am a fair-skinned person with brown auburnish hair. Today I'm wearing it. I usually wear it, sometimes I wear it down. Today I'm wearing it up, but you'll see my bangs, which are very fluffy bangs on my forehead, kind of unruly today.
Okay. It's okay. My mom's vacuuming. I'm so sorry,
No
Garda.
worries. It's all right. It's all good.
It's so funny.
Yeah, it's all good. It's life. And I'm wearing a sort of cat eye glasses. They're sort of perched on the edge of my nose. I have brown eyes. I have red lipstick. I'm wearing what is it? A striped top, blue and white, horizontal stripes. And my background is a white background. You'll see the outline of a lamp in the corner, but it's is it turned on? It's turned on, but you can't really tell from this. Our guest today is Alex Lin, a wonderful playwright, actor, singer. How many things does Alex do? Many things. So I love this. I'm going to read it from Alex's website. Their like little about section make me laugh. Every time I see this, I laugh. Okay, so in a good way, it's fun. Alex Lin is just a girl from Jersey. And as an ex-STEM kid, her work is powered by a drive to bridge the gap between science and entertainment industries. Her plays have been developed with Second Stage, New York Theater Workshop, Ma Yi, South Coast Rep, The O'Neill, and Actors Theater of Louisville, Theater Moo. Go on and on and on. There's many lists of many people. It's all good. They're Lila Atchison-Wallace American Playwriting Fellow at Juilliard. They also have just got a Van Leer Fellowship at Rattlestick Theater. So yay, Alex, for that. They're also a head writer for A24 Film Grant, Army's Frontline Space Media Agency Supercluster, which we'll touch on in our interview, because that's like really cool stuff. Some of their plays are Chinese Republicans, Baron, Bad Chinese Daughter, 39 Revolutions. You might not know this. You might know this. I don't know if you know Alex's work, but their work is funny and smart and brave and grappling with big ideas, but in very playful ways. Welcome, Alex.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Yay. And I, for those of you who know this series, know that I always start with the same question, which is, how is the climate crisis affecting your art practice, your thinking about it, your making of it, all the things around it that affect us?
This is kind of funny timing. It's affecting it extremely negatively. I mean, I'm telling a joke, but I don't know if you've seen all the headlines about the NJ Transit recently.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. I mean, how prescient. And that is literally my train line. I take that train line whenever I have to go in the city. And like this last week, I had to go in every day. And it was an absolute nightmare. And a lot of that is because the overhead wires were literally overheating. And Amtrak and NJ Transit just could not figure out how to fix that in a timely manner whatsoever. So that is a very palpable effect that climate change is having on my life currently. So I'm thinking about that a lot, and how lucky that I wanted to write about NJ Transit, and now I'm having this insane experience for the past couple of weeks.
Yeah. And as I saw in the news, there were also they were like, it wasn't just the overheating of the wires, but there also like were there like fires on the edge of the track?
There was literally a fire. There was literally that was earlier last week.
Okay.
The problems continued because of the overheating of the wires, but that first day, that was really, really bad. It was probably the worst day. There were like trains were canceled, I think, until like 1 a.m. or something. So my partner and I, we actually had to go get the PATH train from 34th Street Herald Square, take the path into Hoboken, and then try to get a train from Hoboken to Secaucus, then to our main line. Like nothing was going out of Penn Station. It was insane. But when I was coming in that day, it was also delayed because separately there was a brush fire. Like there literally was just a brush fire in the Meadowlands. So weird, because my entire life I've lived here, I don't think I've ever heard about a brush fire in the Meadowlands. Like, I don't know if people listening really intimately know what the Meadowlands looks like. It's a swamp. It's literally a swamp. Why is there a brush fire happening in a swamp? That's crazy. Like, you know, and you could see it. It was very close to the tracks. And then the couple times when I was going back and forth from the city to New Jersey, you saw, you know, the aftermath. Everything's just charred. It was so bizarre to see. I'd never in my life, my whole life of living here, have I ever seen anything like that, honestly. You know, you expect that stuff in California and like drier places, but you just hear about it all the time. It's never happened here. So that was a little alarming, you know.
A little wake-up call, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So this is, of course, affecting your life in a very practical way, as it does to many of us. But in your thinking about making plays or making films or making whatever you're making, songs, I know you make songs. Like how does it sit with your practice? Like when you're facing the blank page, how does it kind of work into that space? If it does.
I think in ways, sometimes I guess the most important thing is it makes me think more intensely or intentionally about what I want to write about, and whether that is actively about climate change or whether that is just writing what I want to write about, because I'm just more aware that our world is changing very fast, and I don't know what's going to happen, because unfortunately I am not BP, so I can't like immediately make it stop. I could vote and try to do things like that, but in a way it just makes me think about what I think is important to say, whether that is actively about the climate crisis or just about following my instinct as an artist more, because at the end of the day, God, I don't want to get dark, but I don't want to like have like regrets about not writing about something, right? You know, but yeah,
you need to make what you need to make, and but I think that always, you know, something that's in our hands as playwrights, I think that while we still are playwrights, is the ability to be the architects of the theatrical world that we're crafting. And there are choices that we make around, you know, how could this be designed, you know, when we're collaborating with designers, how sustainable is the show itself and production? Like there are actually material things that we can actually start at the writing table, you know, for text-based work anyway. And I think that that's in our hands, you know.
Yeah, no, that's true. I've been hearing that about sets in particular, and just like being more intentional about like set building. Just talking to a lot of the theaters in New York too, but a lot of them they have their own shops, but they don't really use them. I think this is kind of, a lot of people knows they use shops from upstate, and like it gets crazy expensive, and then sometimes the materials are not like really renewable or reusable. So I've been hearing that too, and I think that's a great thing that we should all be conscious of, you know.
Yeah. I have this dream. I hope it happens sooner rather than later, that all the theaters in the U.S., speaking U.S. right now, obviously it would be lovely if it was everyone in the world, but that all the theaters in the U.S. would pledge to being ecologically sustainable. And actually make that pledge actionable, and not just say it, not just put it on the website and go, we are ecologically sustainable. But not do anything about it, but actually make it happen. Because I do think we need a hands across the water kind of moment around the planet emergency, and I think what's difficult about it, and I was reading an article about it the other day, this question of people go, well, it's invisible. It's like, it's not invisible because your train got stopped.
Right.
Somebody's house got flooded, and people in Miami's houses were flooded up to here. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
like it's actually not invisible. But I think that there's been a narrative that's been sold to us, to people, ordinary people, that nothing can be done. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
this is just the way it is, and like, what could we possibly do? We
Yeah.
could recycle. You know what I mean? And I think that actually, it means doing the really hard work,
Yeah.
step by step, of saying,
Yeah.
no, I'm not going to do it the way I'd always do it.
Right.
What are the 5 things I can do? Which is why I have this dream of like all the theaters, sort of banding together
Yeah,
to make this
totally.
happen. Because it would be, I think, a beautiful and very, message. Everybody talks about messaging, right? So I think the message would be loud and clear, right? Of putting this at the forefront. I wanted to touch on here a little bit about your work in science and arts and science, and how your, what I call sort of, and maybe forgive if I'm saying this wrong, please correct me, your psychom world versus your playwright head. Like, how do these sit together for you? And tell us more about that kind of work that you're doing.
Yeah, so I think a lot of it relates to just storytelling. You hear often, I mean, in playwriting, it's obvious, but also in the marketing and communication world, it's a pretty important word to think about and thing to consider when you're building out any type of marketing campaign, right? It's like, what story are you trying to tell about your company? What story are you trying to tell about like the initiatives that you have? And that's not different for the space industry. It's always been like that for the space industry. I mean, like, you see those really old-timey, really old like NASA videos of like before they even went to the moon landing, just like explaining why they were going to the moon and why it would be a cool thing to do. All of that's related to storytelling. And so I basically got into that field because it was so random. Like, everything in life is so random. I was interning for this digital publication, and then the editor of that digital publication, once I graduated, he got a really, really good job at this space media agency. He became the director of content, and then he reached out to me after graduation and was like, hey, like, are you looking for a job? I need to hire some writers. And I was like, sure. So honestly, I learned a lot about the space industry on the go, which actually was probably the best way to learn about it, just like on the job. And something that's really interesting about just my tenure there is like a huge narrative around sustainability and being climate conscious. I don't know if a lot of people are aware of it because it's not always part of the story that gets told, but like renewable rockets are a huge thing. And like whether that's out of like a complete like purity of like we should take care of the planet, or whether that's out of the reality that rockets are extremely expensive. And I think it's a net beneficial thing. And there is a lot of like meteorology involved in the space industry. Inherently, you kind of have to know what's going on with the weather, and so people know what's going on with the atmosphere, and they know what's going on with the earth. And there also is the reality of like knowing that with rockets that aren't renewable, there's like a lot of space debris in the atmosphere that could then palpably have a negative effect on us on Earth once they, fall back down into Earth because of gravity. So the narrative around like climate awareness and climate change has been there ever since I started working in it in 2018. And it did feel like there were more people within the space industry that were actively aware of it and actively conscious of it, perhaps by nature of just like what people were learning about every day and talking about every day, than people outside of it at that time. I think now, everybody is, well, not everybody's on board, but people are involved in the conversation, whether they like it or not, right? Because there are very palpably like negative things happening as a result. But yeah, I mean, that's how I got involved with the space industry. And a lot of the work I do in it revolves around, funny enough, like podcast interviews. I did a lot of podcast scripting, blogs, kind of like I did breaking news beat at one point. I did social media at one point. Since it's a media agency, we kind of run the gamut, depending on what the client wants. But what was actually most fun to me was like video direction and video scripting. So we did a lot of that for several clients, like, I can name them, it's fine. It's Boeing, SpaceX, some smaller startups in the Cape Canaveral area as well. But those were like our heavy hitter clients. And some stuff with NASA too. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing, super amazing. Yeah, so that's one side of your brain,
Yeah.
life, etc. How did you get into playwriting? Did it come through acting?
Yeah.
Did it come through? I mean, were you just
It's
like an
kind of
actor that were like, I'd
funny.
start writing now, or how did that happen?
Yeah, that is kind of what happened, but it happened because I was working at Actors Theater of Louisville, and we were in the Humana Festival, but it was the Humana Festival where COVID canceled it. Like,
Okay.
it was like 2020 March, and we'd had like one performance, and then the next day we got the email saying, so the governor of Kentucky has ordered a state of emergency.
Right.
The entire thing is canceled. And so I moved back home with my parents to New Jersey, kind of like lost. I was like working at the grocery store at one point, just trying to figure out what to do during this really crazy, unprecedented in my lifetime and also my parents' lifetime, historical event. And I was doing some Zoom stuff as an actor, but like, honestly, I think as we all experience, it didn't necessarily feel like the same. And it didn't necessarily feel super duper fulfilling. And so I said to myself, well, like, I've always thought about writing. Maybe I could just try that right now because, you know, I don't need to be around anyone else to write necessarily. Like, it would be nice, but I could just do it by myself. And so I did that. And then I think I was a very lucky writer during the pandemic because I don't know, whether it's like right place, right time or something other than that, I got into a lot of writers groups that I probably wouldn't have gotten into otherwise because they were going digital. So I had access to them as somebody who's living in New Jersey, even if the writers group was like in LA or like Minneapolis, or like the city. I mean, I could have gone to the city, but you know, nobody was going outside at that point. And through the writers group in the city in particular, that's when I wrote Bad Chinese Daughter, the theater that ran the writers group that is now unfortunately no longer existing. But they gave me like my first option. And I was like, I don't even know what this is. Like, I don't really know what I'm supposed to do. And I was very lucky. I'd worked with Che Yu as an actor before very briefly. And we were Facebook friends. And he saw that like I was doing all this writing, and he became interested and invested in me in that way and asked to read my plays and read the play that got optioned. And so I told the theater, hey, Che is reading this. I know you said like maybe it's a long shot, but if he's reading it, I don't think it is. I think you should email him like right now. And so they did, and he was like, okay, give me the week to read it. He read it. He was very, very kind to me and wanted to work with me on the play and invest in my voice, and said some things early in my career that I really needed to hear to take it seriously and like to really nurture whatever what I thought was like kind of a hobby into something more. So that's really the beginning of all of it. It really started as a way for me to honestly entertain myself during a time where I felt incredibly like incredibly lost and bored at the same time and confused. So I think I was just writing some of the most in a fun way outlandish ideas that are perhaps unproducible but seemed really exciting to me at the time because I didn't have that, I guess, restriction in my brain because I was like, I'm just doing this for fun. And then I met a really important mentor, and it all kind of started really blowing up in like this, in the, the confines of like my bedroom in my parents' house, which didn't necessarily feel real until we all started coming outside again and getting together outside. And I think that's when I had realized it was maybe like 2022 or 2023 or something. I think maybe 2023, like early 2023, that I finally went to the building where my rep is. And I was like, oh, I'm now realizing I think I actually did a lot while I was like in quarantine, and I'm trying to comprehend all of it. So that's really how it started. I guess it kind of started through acting, but honestly, before the pandemic, I kind of thought, well, I'm going to finish the work that I have here, and then I'm going to go back to New York, and I'm going to keep auditioning. And then I'm just going to gig, whatever, right? That's really what I thought. And then the pandemic happened, and my life completely changed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I hear you. How did Juilliard come into the picture? How recent is that then?
That's pretty recent. I just finished my first year.
Okay.
And I applied, I guess, the year before. It ended up being, this is so funny. It ended up being the only school I applied to.
Okay.
Because I kind of applied like last minute on a whim. I was at the point where I was like, I could do like a program, or I don't really feel like I have to. So I said to myself, well, if I was going to do a program, it would have to be free. I don't want to take out loans for that. And I wanted it to feel like a program that I could still have a life and still do my job that, just to be honest, gives me really good health insurance, which I appreciate and need, and helps me feel secure. So, I mean, Juilliard was the top of the list because of the structure of the program for that. But then I also thought to myself, I've had a lot of friends who went to UCSD who really liked it. Oh, I'll put that on the list. And then I was like, oh, and I've had friends who've gone to Yale who really liked it. So I'll put that on the list. Well, I decided too late for Yale, which made me feel incredibly dumb because I looked at the website and I was like, oh, okay, well, the deadline's passed. I guess I won't do that. And then I was in the middle of doing the UCSD application when one of my friends who was still there at the time, I think she's still there actually, texted me and said, don't fill it out. We can't take anyone this year. And I was like, okay, I'm just not going to fill it out then. So then the only school I applied for was Juilliard. And so I applied, and I honestly, obviously I tried on the application, but I didn't think anything of it seriously, because I was like, it's such a long shot. It's Juilliard. I also was like, oh, UCSD, I know everybody there. And like, yeah, like I know some people. So I was like, okay, like there's like a reasonable chance I could get an interview, right? Juilliard, I didn't know anybody. I was just like, I like know this program is structured for what I would prefer. And I admire the people that went there, and that was the end of it. And so I applied, and then I didn't hear anything until May. And so I kind of was like, I think I just didn't get in. I'm going to go on with my life. And then I randomly get an email from Adam Sinkowitz, of all people. Like looking at the email, and I'm like, wow, do you know how many college students do your monologues? You must know. You must see the deposit every month. He emails me and he was like, hey, do you have time to talk 9 a.m. tomorrow? And I was like, what is going on? I said, yeah, sure. Happy to chat. He's like, great. Here's the Zoom link. You're going to talk to David and Tanya. Don't be nervous. They just want to talk to you. And I was like, okay, I'm really nervous now. Especially because you said, don't be nervous. And so then I did the Zoom. It was like a normal interview. David and Tanya are so sweet. They're incredibly sweet and generous. And they just asked about how I got into writing, and more about me, and just like what my process is for writing, if I like writers group, blah, 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 right? And so I just answered those questions. And then at the end of it, David like says to Tanya, "Oh, okay, I think that's it for me. What about you, Tanya?" And she says, "Yep, that's it for me too." And then, of course, he's such a, oh my God. I think people don't know this about David Lindsay-Abaire. He's actually a really good actor, and I don't know why he hasn't like been in anything, because he just is. He's like actually a diva. It's kind of amazing, and I mean that in a kind way, not like a selfish diva, but like as an actor, oh, he's like diva. He like takes this long dramatic pause, and then like looks up at his camera and says, "Well, you know, you got in." So, and I was like, "That is crazy." So I mean, kind of much like writing for me, Juilliard happened, I don't want to say randomly, because yeah, I did put in effort and I did fill out an application, and I got recommendations, and I don't want to downplay, like, yes, like I'm like, I sent in a strong play. I sent in a play that I felt was really representative of me. But also at the end of the day, I'm like, it was kind of random. Like randomly, I forgot to send in Yale on time. Randomly, UCSD was pausing on applications for that year. And so then I randomly decided, okay, I'm only going to apply to Juilliard then. And then they randomly decided to let me in. But honestly, I mean, I really love the program. I'm happy that my instinct was right in terms of the structure and in terms of what it has to offer, because I've been very happy to, you know, still keep my job, keep working, both like day job and also like professionally as a playwright with workshops and stuff like that. Like that's been really easy to navigate. Whereas like I think in programs that just require more class time, it would be harder. You know, I also appreciate that I could stay in New Jersey. I really love living here. You know, it's where I'm from. I think I might be just like biased, but yeah. But truthfully, I think I knew I was going to learn, but I didn't know exactly what I was going to learn about myself as a writer. And so that's been like the really beautiful, much needed surprise of the past year. I've learned a lot about myself, what I feel like I'm good at, what I feel like I could work on, how I react when I feel like I'm like stuck, and then how to move past that. And then also just like what's important to me and what's not important to me, and navigating those things. And honestly, I have like my cohort to thank for that, and also David and Tanya. They really are fantastic teachers and mentors, and you really do feel like they genuinely care about you as a writer and a person, and I'm really appreciative of that.
Yeah, so for people that don't know, David Lindsay-Abaire and Tanya Barfield, in case people are not aware of who these people are.
You should know them. You should know them.
You should know them. They're amazing writers and wonderful people. So cool. And I didn't really know that about your whole like getting in and how it happened and all that stuff. That's so amazing.
It was so random. It really was, and a good random thing. Like really great. Yeah.
So you came in with a play to Juilliard.
Yeah.
So what have you been building? So I know that part of being a writer is that you're always writing, maybe.
Yes.
What are the stuff that you're kind of noodling on these days?
Yeah, these days, well, I'm actually working on Baron a lot. And so for people who don't know, Baron is a very loose now at this point Yerma adaptation that I have that came out of you know, both like personal experience, but also very weird conversation I had with the director once. I actually don't know if I told you this, Caridad, but like
what? What happened?
Okay, I was talking to this director. I'm not gonna say who it is. But we were talking about Yerma because we both love Lorca. And essentially this director's thesis was that Yerma is really about a husband who can't make love to his wife. And I was like, I just think I fundamentally disagree with that interpretation of the play, considering the play is her name, and also she's there the whole time. Like it's
Yeah.
all about her. And this director was like, no, no, no. It's about this man can't have sex with his wife. And I was just so, I really respect this person, but I was so kind of taken aback by that interpretation that I started thinking, well, I think you're only thinking that because like by convention of like when this play was written, you kind of had to have a husband to have children, right? Like, or you had to have a man in your life. And I'm thinking nowadays there's so many women who are doing it by themselves by choice. And so I thought to myself, well, what does like Yerma look like today then? When like the reality is you don't need a man to have a baby if you want to. You really don't. You can adopt, you can do IVF, you could do a bunch of other things. You don't need to have like a male partner to have a child. So that's where it kind of all started from. And I've been working on a lot this summer. We've been lucky with a lot of development opportunities. We just finished in Texas and we're about to go to Cape Cod and then Ojai later in the summer. So doing a lot of development work around that. But in terms of new things, I actually just finished another play all about nuns. It's crazy. I think we're having like a theater collective mind meld about nuns. I'm seeing a lot of plays about nuns, but I'm happy to be part of the wave. I'm really fascinated by, especially like a medieval nun or a nun like pre-Vatican II nun, where there is like sort of this underlying factor of it that is kind of the way that women in a way could deny the world of men, which I find really powerful and interesting, and a huge curiosity as to like what these women, especially like further back, like more like period PC type material, like what was the motivation for them to become a nun and like what was the experience of that. So this play in particular, the working title is Ludun because it's based on a real thing that happened. And there's actually a book that Aldous Huxley wrote about it, but I kind of don't like the book because it feels like a little bit of a misinterpretation of what I understand to be the events, but I also appreciate it for what it is. Essentially, in medieval France, there was this convent of Ursuline nuns who discovered that one of the priests in their diocese was more than likely like molesting the young girls in their local village. And in fact, like many of them were getting pregnant and it was becoming a huge problem in the village. The parents were very upset. The fathers in particular were very upset and trying to get this priest kicked out, but nobody wanted to kick out the priest because Catholic Church was really strong and they did not want to get rid of him. And so these nuns ostensibly discovered this, and they essentially pretended to get possessed and like tortured by demons and say that he was the one conjuring the demons, so that then the Catholic Church would then either order an exorcism, and the exorcism failed, they would order him burned at the stake, and they were successful. So I find that story incredibly interesting. I'm amazed by just like the thinking of these women and how they leveraged kind of in a way like religious fervor subversively to do what I perceive as their version of justice. And I find that very fascinating. I find it very moving. And so I wanted to write a play about it and like investigate more, not only who they are as like women who have chosen to dedicate themselves to the Catholic Church and then discovering this terrible thing happening in the Catholic Church, right? But also as people, like individually. So yeah, I mean, that's a play that I just finished and will probably be the first thing I bring into Juilliard next year to work on. So thinking about that, I have pretty much like, you're going to see how much I write now. I'm going to sound so crazy. But I have pretty much until end of year, my writing schedule tentatively locked down. A lot of it is working on commissions. So there's a Sloan commission that I want to tie up loose ends on. I have time blocked out to start on the commission with the Lortel, and then also a commission with Working Theater. And that should pretty much take me till the end of the year. And hopefully then I'll give myself maybe like 2 months for a break and then start working on my Two River commission. I'm very busy, but like, but it's a good thing. It is a good thing. So that's kind of the way that I work as a writer. I just really have to block out that time on my calendar and like actually dedicate the time on like a digital device that I can see, and just try to knock the pages out, even if I'm not like in love with them right away. I just figure, well, at least I have something instead of having nothing, and then I could talk to somebody about it, and then I can probably get a better idea from talking to someone and then rewrite it the way that makes me happy. But like, as long as I have something, I think that that's a win, you know. That was a very long-winded answer, but like
No, it's all good. It's all, I mean, you're obviously noodling on a lot of things. I mean, I guess, one of the things that I think comes up a lot in our field, which I'm sure you're familiar, is the writing of the artist statement, or, that you often have to submit for grant applications and so forth. And and it's just a reality of our work, right? Like, I'm not saying abolish them, but I think they've become sort of, I think, a compelling. So instead of a chore, I think of them as actually a space to actually really start to articulate what you do, and to really think through it. And also, people change, and so what you wrote, I don't know, 5 years ago may be different from what you write now in that artist statement. So if you were writing your artist statement now, like what would be part of it? Like, how would you talk to people about your work and what you're making?
I think a lot of it, honestly, as I've gotten older and understood my work better and just understood the things that I have in my repertoire right now, so much of it is about being a woman. And I know that sounds so general, but it really isn't. There's just so much to mine from, especially because, I mean, we live in the world we live in, right? And I've found, somebody that's biracial and multiple ethnicities. I think to some extent, patriarchal society is somewhat of a universal. It's not always, right? But like, there's a lot of it ingrained everywhere, in different ways, right? But it's something I've always found. Something I found powerful is the solidarity that women can have with each other. Ideally in spite of like whatever walk of life that they might come from. I think a lot of it's about that. I think a lot of it is in turn about just like the political state of being a woman. I think a lot of it is about like the socioeconomic state of being a woman. I think, like you said in the beginning, I do tend to like tackle big ideas, but I also like to tackle like very difficult ideas. I think, and maybe that's inherently every idea, right? It's just kind of my world perspective. There's no, to say that there's like an easy answer for everything, I think is a little disingenuous. I don't think there's an easy answer for everything. I think there are like easy moral answers, right? But then when you get to the practicalities of how to actually successfully enact praxis, I don't think it's ever like a simple, easy solution, because we live in a very complicated, if not self-imposed structure of society. I think my, I guess, artistic sensibilities were most solidified after writing Chinese Republicans, because it is a very complicated topic, and especially after watching the debate. I'm literally like, LOL, and like, I didn't want to. What's the word? Watching the debate, I didn't necessarily feel like prescient or clairvoyant, because I don't like believe in that. But I did feel like, well, I feel like a lot of people have been feeling this way for a long time. And we are now starting to see just the issues with our party system. Two parties, I mean, come on, like why would two ever be enough? There's virtually very few other societies that are run by two party systems. It's a little silly and disingenuous. But then, you know, like the play talks about, we live in such a corporate focused, capital focused country that we've unfortunately now at this point, inherently, there are only two parties because they're the only two parties that have any kind of capital.
Right.
So yeah, not to get too much on my soapbox there, but I think writing that and then seeing people's response to it was really powerful. That saying this thing that I, in some ways, was kind of afraid to say because I was afraid people were going to interpret it wrong. That it was like a pessimistic sort of view of what's happening, when I actually think there is some optimism at the end of the play. Maybe not with like the main character, but maybe with the younger character. I think there is like there should be some hope there. But it's a complicated hope because, you know, if that younger character soars and soars and soars, what happens to our main character? I don't really know. I think she kind of gets left in the dust. And I think a lot of people, I don't know, we've existed with this system for so long. Inherently, if there's any change, some people are going to be very like confused and not happy about it. But I also think, does that mean you don't try to make things better at all? You know, does that just mean you don't try? I don't think so. I don't think that's a worthy reason to not try. So suffice to say, I think a lot of my current artistic sensibilities incorporate that, just like complicated topics, complicated people, complicated women. I love all of it. I just think it's real. And I think just because somebody's complicated doesn't mean that they're inherently a bad person. At the same time, doesn't mean that they're not worthy of critique, you know, but I'm really interested in that gray area because I think that's what life is, you know.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And I think that so for those of you watching this in the future, when this airs, so there was a reference to a debate, and I shall say it was a presidential debate. It was on CNN. It was between the former president, insurrectionist Donald Trump, and the incumbent president, Joseph Biden, in the United States. And it was aired on CNN with no audience and no press. And so I just want to forefront that in case you're doing citations out in the universe, what we're talking about, because I also know there will be a second debate in the fall.
Oh boy. Yeah.
And so, yeah. So we shall see what comes of it all. You know, I think to that end, around complexity and articulating the sociopolitical, economic, human, and end-stage capitalism, I think that I want to just lift up two threads that you kind of pulled here. So one of them had to do with, well, I hope there's some hope at the end, you know, all that, and not everybody is a bad, you know, not everybody's a bad person, whatever. And so I would say that there's something that's always leveled at us as writers, I find, and maybe, you know, you have found this as well, where, you know, we'll be writing something, and it'll be experienced in some way, whether it be a reading or whatever, a production or et cetera, or a workshop. And then often the question at the end is, well, what's the hope at the end of the play? And I've become a little bristly about that as a writer, because I actually don't think it's our job. And I think that also not all stories, you know, have that, right? Like, and there's something to, I think, just saying, you know, I think the act of writing is a hopeful act.
Yeah.
And making art is hopeful, because you wouldn't make it unless you thought someone would someday see it somewhere. Right?
Yes.
Like there is this kind of like there will be a future,
Totally.
right? The act of making art is about there will be a future, right? But I
Yes.
think that within the art itself, I don't think that there is necessarily a responsibility that the writer needs to have to the storytelling mechanism inside of what they're making to have it and hopefully or provide hope or
Yeah.
so I think because I think this gets us into a space that basically is, I'm not going to say it's antithetical to art because I think that's too extreme a statement, but more about misrepresents what art does, which is it actually sort of is an arena to explore ambiguity and to explore, and sometimes people do evil things.
Yeah.
And then they're just being evil, right? You know what I mean? And sometimes people are perhaps beyond redemption, So, I think that, people that devastate the earth and ravage the earth, I don't think that that's particularly a noble thing to be doing. It doesn't mean that there are parts of their life where they're not being noble or behaving nobly, but the core of their existence tied to extraction and exploitation is not noble. So so I just thought I'd lift that up and kind of see how you respond.
Yeah, no, I think I agree with you. I think the writer's only responsibility is to write. I think that your only responsibility is to write and create art and say what you really think and what you believe. And I think this is where a lot of people get tripped up now, especially with the unfortunate financial state of the industry. Your responsibility is not to write what you think people want to hear or what you think a theater wants to do. I really think your responsibility is to write what you want to write. And if that's like a 16-person play, I'm not going to lie, it probably there will be some hurdles for you. But I'm also not going to say don't write a 16-person play, because I just heard about the South Coast that one of their plays in their season is like 13 people. And they built, oh my God, I don't know if I should say too much of this, but I know that they liked that play so much that other parts of their season adjusted around that. And so all that suffice to say is, if you write something that means something to you, I truthfully believe it'll mean something to somebody else. And whether that person is like a normal person on the street or happens to be like an artistic director, I believe both are equally valuable. And also, I mean, the reality of like producing nowadays is your play is not, well, I won't say not, it probably won't get produced within the first year that you write it. It'll probably take a little bit of time. And that can also like work to your benefit immensely. So that's what I have to say about that. And about like people, like their core existence is not noble. I like ardently agree with that. And I sometimes find myself wondering what it is with some of these people who are making these decisions and what's motivating them. And I try to, what's the word? Not empathize, but try to have like an understanding of the logic of what they think that they're doing. And it helps me sometimes. But also, I know this might get too woo-woo psychiatry, whatever, but like I do also ardently believe in like the idea of like, well, what happened to you? I don't believe people are born that way. I believe things happen in their life, good or bad, that shape them into the type of person who can make those decisions and dissociate from them. And they're also inherently, nowadays, there's also compartmentalization to it, because like these people who are making these decisions, like let's just say, for example, maybe like an oil executive or something, that guy's not on the oil rig.
Right.
He's not actively there unless he's a very involved oil executive. He's not like actively there all the time. He's not saying, just talk about being in Texas, talking to the people in Fort Worth, saying sometimes in Houston, there's just like randomly oil spills and like your water will be contaminated randomly. I think sometimes it's easy for an executive to hear that and then kind of not care because they see the numbers in their portfolio and they're kind of like, well, they don't see that. They just see that their shareholders are happy and now they can buy whatever it is that they want to buy or do whatever it is that they want to do with their money. They don't really see it physically. And I think the same thing happens a lot with like, especially nowadays with like drones and technology. It happens with war. People don't see it, so it's hard for them to understand it or care about it. And I think it falls into the idea of like, yeah, the personal is political. The things that happen in your life do probably affect the way that you interact with the world, not just on an interpersonal level, but also on a, you know, you hear stories of, what do you want to call it? I guess like, you know, there's definitely like a type of like a Republican who did not grow up wealthy, did not grow up privileged, did not grow up with any of these things. You know, a large part possibly immigrant population, right, as well, like fleeing from some type of war, usually war, right? That's usually what it is. Who become very conservative because of their life experiences and negative connotations that there might be towards any type of like socialist program because of personal experience with those types of programs or people acting in the name of socialism doing not really great things. Yeah, I really do believe in like the past is always affecting the present, is always affecting the future. So when I see people behaving in a way that I perceive as evil, I obviously get upset, but I also start to think to myself, okay, but why? What's the reason? Like, what happened? What like got them to that place? Because people aren't like born oil executive. People aren't born like, I don't know, technocrats, right? Like they're not like, they don't come out like that. And when they're kids, they don't like act like that either, you know. And it makes me think of like, oh my God, I don't want to give him too much airtime, but like that, like I think Donald Trump's aunt wrote a book or something about the way that about the way their family was.
Right.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. It's just like, no wonder. No wonder. It's a crazy family system. Of course. Like when you see stuff like that, it's like, well, I guess somebody was going to turn out like that, you know? So that's my very long-winded response to that.
It's all good. It's all good. We're almost at time, but I wanted to, I try to ask this question always. Sometimes I forget, but I'll ask it this time, which is, what dreams do you have for the field, for the theater?
Oh, I hope that we find a new sustainable model. That's my hope. I think we will. I really believe it. I really do. I don't want to sound so silly. I feel, or I don't want it to sound like I'm feigning optimism or something like that, but I really believe that people enjoy theater. People love stories. There's a reason why we keep telling them all the time. There's a reason why, you know, people are like always watching TV. They always want to go see movies. And when they can afford to go to see a show, they want to go see the show, you know? They like going to, we like doing that as like a culture and society. So I believe something will be, there will be a solution that's found. I don't think the road is going to be easy. I don't think it's going to be without bumps, but I do believe that we will find a way to continue the field in a way that I think moves away from a model that just clearly is not sustainable anymore. And I also hope that writers who are just coming up right now are not discouraged by what they're seeing and what they're hearing. I mean, I talk to my peers all the time. The reality is, yes, it's very hard to get a production. It's really, really, really hard. That doesn't mean it's not worth pursuing. That doesn't mean workshops aren't useful, that they aren't like artistically fulfilling processes. Of course, the dream is to have your play come to life, but I think I would also say enjoy the process as well, because it's kind of that beautiful time in playmaking where you can really make a lot of mistakes or make crazy choices, and the stakes are low enough that that's okay if they don't work, and if they do work, oh my god, how fun. How great that you discovered that. So those are, like, ultimately the hopes that I have for the field, and, like, another hope I have, this might be a little controversial, but I'm gonna say it anyway. I appreciate being viewed as, like, a strong, like, Asian American writer. I really do appreciate it, but I also hope for a time in the field where that's not the only thing expected of me, you know? Where I can, by virtue of just being a creative person and being a writer, just write what I wanna write about, and I don't necessarily feel the pressure to have it specifically always be about being Asian, or, like, have an Asian character who's just Asian, and that's it. And that's it. We don't need to make it about trauma, we don't need to make it about anything else. We can literally just give an Asian actor a job. We can just have a story that has a central character that is this race, and it's not, like, the problem of the play. I think that's another hope that I have, not just for myself, but, like, obviously other writers too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a beautiful hopes that you're articulating. As always, if you watch these episodes, what I usually do is do a wave and sign off. But afterwards, after I hit end recording, I stay online with our guest to do some offline goodbyes. For now, thanks for watching or listening. However you're experiencing this, Conversations from the Alcove. Check out Alex Lin's work wherever you can find it. New Play Exchange. If you don't know about New Play Exchange, can I just say it's a very wonderful resource catalog, basically, of new plays that are being written in the moment, and they're being put up there, and you can buy a subscription and access them. So I have no skin in the game. I'm not, I'm not like, asking you to buy a subscription, but I am saying that it's a wonderful resource, and sometimes people don't know about it. So New Play Exchange, if you don't know about it, exists, and you can find Alex's work there as well, hopefully on a stage or screen near you. For now, so long, and more soon on Conversations from the Alcove. Bye.